First things first, it's Nietzsche, not Nietzsche. Nietzsche was born in 1844 in a quiet village in Germany, where his father was a Lutheran Protestant priest. His father died when he was 5 years of age. He was privately educated and excelled in classic philology, which is the study of language and historical sources. He became a professor at the mere age of 24 in 1869. In his first book, The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche examines the origins of a Greek tragedy. He believed that the origins of tragedies did not yet have that optimistic view of Socrates and Plato, which were that if we only had reason, we would have virtue and then happiness as well. He tells the story of Silenus, a demigod who was a companion of Dionysus, who was captured by King Midas. Midas wanted to know what was best things for human beings. Silenus says, the very best thing is to not have been born, to be nothing. However, the second best thing is for you to die soon. This is possibly the most cynical view of human existence possible. He wrote several other books, including The Gay Science, where he proclaims God is dead as he explores the harmful nature of Christianity. In the parable of the madman, he accuses, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he introduces the idea of a Superman who is taking the place of God, who is dead, and explains that the meaning of life is not religious meekness, but rather to be a force of life. Beyond Good and Evil builds upon Thus Spoke Zarathustra and explains how flaws in liberal democracy depend on notions of good and bad, which are religious moral views. In this, he focuses on what he says is the ultimate state of man, the desire to achieve power. In The Will to Power, Nietzsche explores the idea that all life is driven by a lust for power. Nietzsche's contribution to existentialism was the idea that man must accept that they are part of a material world, regardless of what else might exist. As part of this world, man must live as if there is nothing else beyond life. A failure to live, to take risks, is a failure to realize that humans have potential. Nietzsche's moral philosophy is largely a critical attack on ideas about what is moral. He highlights how these ideas have their origins in religion. Nietzsche argues that religion is falsely descriptive. For instance, weakness becomes goodness of heart, low status becomes humility, inability to bring about change becomes patience, being unable to take revenge becomes forgiveness, retaliation becomes a desire for justice, and hatred of an enemy becomes hatred of injustice. He argues that this serves to keep the weak in place, and argues that accepted norms and values about morality have a negative impact on the strong, the Übermensch, who are the highest types of human beings, Nietzsche's higher men. Nietzsche does not believe that humans are the superior species, but rather that some individuals are becoming an Übermensch in the real world. He also believes that the path to becoming an Übermensch begins by realizing that God has been created by man, and not the other way around, and that God is dead, meaning that the concept of God is no longer helpful for answering questions about good and evil or the meaning of life. To be Übermensch, one must be self-determined, meaning that one has their own views, ideas, perspectives, judgments, and opinions, rather than simply following the majority, or herd, as Nietzsche puts it. He also said that Übermensch is creative in terms of personality and style, and enjoyment of the arts. Self-growth is what Nietzsche referred to as becoming or overthrowing, and that's about continual self-growth, or as Nietzsche puts it, a life of becoming is just being. This involves pushing one's limits and going further than one has gone in the past. Nietzsche declares, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, with you I broke whatever my heart revered, I overthrew all boundary stones and images. Overcoming challenges is also essential for Übermensch, as Nietzsche believed that it is through overcoming challenges that we grow as humans. Flexibility is also a vital character trait. Nietzsche believes that one should not live by inflexible rules handed down by society. Instead, we should create their own ideas, standards, and goals by which to live and guide their lives, and these may change and evolve over time as the person and their circumstances change. Nietzsche also argues that we should never be contented and to continually strive for more. He says discontent, which spurs us on to do the unusual, helps us to achieve the exceptional, to make great discoveries, and to literally create a new world. Nietzsche believed that flexibility served the Übermensch. He spoke of how Christianity has imposed rules and restrictions that do not serve life, and which the Church itself does not follow. Self-mastery is vital to the Übermensch, as it helps him to overcome the difficulties and challenges that will put off and discourage others. This is why the Übermensch triumphs in spite of life's tribulation, as it can rise above the barriers or walls that others would find impossible to pass. Self-confidence is another Übermensch trait. One element of Nietzsche's philosophy is the rejection of the Christian emphasis on shame. Nietzsche believes that this drains self-confidence, and believes that people need self-confidence to not only achieve things, but to also feel happy and fulfilled. Nietzsche believes that the Übermensch has a cheerful attitude towards life, appreciating what life has to offer and aspects of themselves. Finally, courage is what makes the Übermensch a leader, to face challenges, to dominate situations and people, or to bring about change. For Nietzsche, success means having the courage and power to conquer, achieve, overcome, dominate, and emerge victorious. He compared the weak majority of sheep with the herd instinct. He said that society also contains wolves who have the right to do what they like to reach their own potential. He contrasted the traditional slave morality, which protects the weak by valuing things like compassion and altruism, with what he terms master morality, and that's about being powerful and valuing success, ambition, and ruthlessness. In 1889, he had a nervous breakdown after seeing a man beat his horse, and this was the date of the anniversary of his brother's death. He spent the last 11 years of his life in a very declining state, and then ended up in a totally vegetative state, and died in 1900. This was just as his popularity was reaching its pinnacle. Some speculate that this was caused by his overthinking, and others believe it may have been the result of him having contracted the sexually transmitted disease, syphilis. This had infected his brain and his nervous system. Like most philosophers, there are many misconceptions about what he believed and said. One of the most notorious is the fact that his ideas were said to be adopted by Hitler and the Nazis. One common misconception of Nietzsche is that he was a Nazi, was anti-Semitic, and that Hitler was influenced by him, while all of these ideas were untrue. Nietzsche's sister, Elizabeth, received roses from Adolf Hitler in 1932 at a performance of a play by Mussolini. In 1934, she then gave Hitler Nietzsche's walking stick. He was a member of the Nazi Party and was married to an anti-Semite. Nietzsche did not attend their wedding. He also once wrote that all anti-Semites ought to be shot, and when asked if he'd like to read Nietzsche, Hitler responded with, "No, I can't really do much with Nietzsche, he is not my guide." In America, in 1924, Leopold and Loeb were students who were studying Nietzsche, and both were Übermensch. They set out to prove this by committing the perfect crime, the murder of 14-year-old Bobby Franks. They believed by doing so without emotional detection, and this would prove their status as Übermensch. They were caught and convicted. Over 120 years since his death, Nietzsche has remained relevant. For instance, he has a different perspective to human rights than the view commonly held in the Western world, and though he did not speak specifically of human rights, Nietzsche might disagree with the principle of human rights as he argued that traditional morality benefits the weak but harms the strong, who could do better if they were not constrained by moral rules. The belief in being the best that we can be and the growing interest in superheroes is also greatly influenced by Nietzsche's ideas. Likewise, in the fight for racial justice, activists have been inspired by Nietzsche. Huey P Newton of the Black Power Civil Rights Movement was a reader of Nietzsche and was heartened by the idea that African Americans did not have to bow down to the white god in Christianity that kept him docile and subjugated. Together with Bobby Searle, Nietzsche formulated the idea of a black power that was instrumental in the civil rights movement and more recently today, the Black Lives Matter movement. Ultimately, Nietzsche was an influential philosopher whose ideologies continue to have a fundamental impact on modern society.